program continued to progress, and in December 1968, the Apollo 8 mission deeply inspired me. I was home from Ann Arbor for Christmas break, and I remember getting emotional with really tears of awe and joy as the Apollo 8 crew read from Genesis as their kind of ghostly pictures of the moon's surface went by. Of all the TV broadcasts I've seen in my life, that Christmas broadcast from lunar orbit was probably the most moving. The other legacy from Apollo 8 is this Earthrise photo showing the Earth as a small, fragile planet without political borders and just with a thin atmosphere. To me, it emphasized a global perspective that all humans are travelers in the same exceptional blue planet. And it's great to have Apollo 8 crew member Jim Lovell here at Spacefest. Over Christmas, while back in Chicago, I made arrangements for a summer job for the summer of 1969. Through connections, I got a job selling men's clothing at a men's clothing store on Michigan Avenue in Chicago. Since my prior summer job was a dirty gig doing roofing in 100-degree heat with dust and soot, this seemed like quite a step forward. I asked for and was granted the opportunity to take 1 week off during the summer of 1969. Also over break, I spent some time with my oldest childhood friend, a fellow space enthusiast named Marv Rubenstein. Marv suggested that we go down to the Cape for the Apollo 11 launch, since this would be scheduled for July, right in the middle of our college break. I agreed, and I said I would do my best to try to get us official press credentials from NASA. I knew press passes would open many doors for us. We decided to wait and see how the next flight, Apollo 10, would be before actually making hotel and plane reservations, because the target date for Apollo 11 could change. Returning to Ann Arbor in 1969, I started inquiring about getting approval from the Daily senior editors about covering Apollo 11 for the newspaper. Normally, freshmen were not sent on out-of-town assignments, and the Daily had never covered a space event at all. After some discussion, the senior editors agreed that I could get an assignment letter, but their caveat was that I would have to pay for any trip myself. The Daily was not going to fund any expedition to a space launch. Assignment letter in hand, I contacted NASA's public affairs about getting a press pass. To make a long story short, I hit a brick wall. NASA considered college journalists as students and not real journalists. They did not grant press passes to college students, and especially not for an Apollo launch, for which they received literally hundreds of requests for accreditation. Marv and I seriously reconsidered whether to go down to the Cape without NASA credentials. Another factor was that I had heard about a music festival being planned for New York in August with some of the greatest rock stars of the time. While I liked a variety of musical forms, rock and roll was and is my favorite. Now remember, I could only take 1 week off from my cushy job on Michigan Avenue. So I was faced with a choice in the summer of 1969. Go to Apollo 11 in July, or go to Woodstock in August. It was either one or the other. I could not do both. The late Yogi Berra once said, quote, "When you come to a fork in the road, take it." I was at a fork, and I chose Apollo 11, thinking there would always be other musical festivals. That was true, but Woodstock did turn out to be a little bit unique compared to subsequent music festivals. We anxiously awaited Apollo 10 in May 1969 to see if 11 would still launch in July, and whether 11 would be the first lunar landing or not. Apollo 10 was a dress rehearsal for a lunar landing. Tom Stafford and Gene Cernan, whom I had met 3 years before, successfully flew to within 47,000 feet of the lunar surface. Right after the Apollo 11 crew landed, I swung into action. I wanted to get a hotel room as soon as possible because hotels filled up for manned launches. We were a low-budget operation, so I looked at motels instead of hotels, and I found this aging property in Cocoa Beach called the Sea Missile Motel. I reserved a room with 2 beds for $10 a night, which is $64 in 2016 dollars. I also investigated airline flights between Chicago and the small nearby airport in Melbourne, Florida. On June 2nd, 1969, I purchased a one-stop round-trip ticket for $94.50 to go down to the Cape. This is equivalent to $611 in 2016 dollars. Meanwhile, I did not give up on the quest for NASA press passes. Jim Heck, one of the senior editors of the Daily, was going to Washington to be the editor of the College Press Service Wire Network, a group of college papers that exchanged stories. I asked Jim to try and intercede with NASA to present our case. Marv and I were going to go down to Apollo 11, but damn, I wanted that press pass. On June 17th, a month before the launch, I received some unexpected news. Jim was successful in getting me and my friend official NASA accreditation. I was thrilled. He made the case that I was representing all college newspapers, not just one, and that I should be considered an exception to the rule. He must have been pretty persuasive, because a few days later, I received my NASA press pass and extensive press instructions from NASA. I learned that over 3,500 reporters and editors were going to cover Apollo 11, and so NASA was going to set up an Apollo 11 news center in a two-story industrial building in Cape Canaveral on Highway A1A across from the Hilton. I started detailed planning for the trip, both what I needed to bring and what I would need to do. Most importantly, I borrowed my father's old Kodak camera that had a fine German lens and bought 3 rolls of 36 exposure color slide film. This was long before digital photography, and so the number of photos I could take would be limited, and I would have to plan them carefully. Most of the images you're going to see from now on are from those color slides that I scanned in recent years. I also came up with the idea of writing a freelance article to pay the $300 the trip would cost. This is over $1,900 in 2016 dollars. I sent off queries to 5 publications for young people. School ended in Ann Arbor at the end of May, and I started my summer job at Murray Smickler's Men's Clothing in Chicago. I celebrated my 19th birthday on July 11th, 1969, as I started packing for the trip down to the Cape 2 days later. July 13th was the start of my once-in-a-lifetime adventure. Marv and I got to the O'Hare Airport, and we were waiting in line, and we noticed a kind of familiar woman, an older woman standing in front of us. So I kind of looked over her shoulder a little bit and looked at her ticket, and I saw the name on the ticket was Rose Cernan. This was Gene Cernan's mother, and we recognized her from being at the reception where she was at for Gemini 9 the 3 years before. We introduced ourselves, and we learned that she also was going down to the Cape to see the launch. The flight took us to Tampa, where we changed planes, and we again chit-chatted with Mrs. Cernan. We landed at the small Melbourne airport. Exiting the plane, astronaut Alan Bean was there to pick up Mrs. Cernan because Gene was otherwise occupied. Mrs. Cernan asked us what schools we attended, and she introduced us to Alan Bean. We talked with him for a couple minutes. He told us it was a good time to come down for a launch, and that he was next, meaning that he was going to be on Apollo 12. 3 other men also approached, one wearing a blue flight suit. We were introduced to Jim Irwin in the flight suit, to Charlie Duke, and to Bruce McCandless, who were also there waiting for family members. Luggage at this small airport was in a rack outside the airport, and so we walked out there along with the astronauts and took some pictures. I asked Jim Irwin to take a picture of me with Alan Bean. So this photograph was actually, the photographer on this photo was actually Jim Irwin. Unfortunately, it was the first film on the roll and was partially exposed to light with color on just half the shot. This is a black and white version of the image that was processed by my friend